All right, learners, let's talk about this big messy board. From a distance, you can see there's a left side and a right side. Left side is not specific. It's also called the innate immune system. I'd love for you to look up some synonyms for innate. You might, as you understand better and better this system, why it's called innate. It's consisting of two punches. The first punch, skin and mucous membranes, and then a more cellular response that is inflammation, temperature and fever, very specific proteins that are released, and then a litany of white blood cells. When you look at the second side or the right side of this, I shouldn't say second response, when you look at the right side, which is the specific response, this all hinges on the identification of a not self structure in the body. We call this the acquired immune system, and pieces of this we could consider are adaptations because we are learning and then responding to what's happening in the system. Very specifically, the specific immune response, or the third punch, is divided into two steps, both simultaneously occurring. The humoral, which results in the production of antibodies which attack, they don't attack, they mark antigens, and that marking can cause the antibodies to stick to each other, or therefore the marked cells to stick to each other and agglutinate, or it just is a flag that signals other cells to destroy that cell. The second part of the third punch, or the specific immune response, is called cell-mediated. This is when helper T cells, who did possibly try and instigate the humoral response, will start morphing into two very, very deadly systems. One are the dreaded or loved cytotoxic T cells. These are cells that will cruise around looking for any cell that has been infected and displaying the identified antigen and killing it, destroying it quite succinctly and quickly. But additionally, T cells also become memory cells. Back over on the humoral side, you'll also see that your B cells that eventually became plasma cells could also have morphed into memory cells. The memory cell component of this is why our defense system, not just the left side, but the left side and the right side of the board, is called the immune system. So let's go ahead and zoom into this final little section down here. If you look closely at this graphic, you'll see that on the y-axis, it says the amount of antibodies. And on the x-axis, it doesn't say, but it's actually time. Initially, there is a first exposure to an antigen, and it takes a few days for the body to actually kick into the specific or acquired immune response and start taking in these pathogens, your macrophages and your dendritic cells, and some of your neutrophils and monocytes were probably gobbling some of these pieces up, but it takes a little while before they present to the cell-mediated cells to trigger this humoral and cell-mediated response, specifically to that antigen. And so it takes a few days. You'll see that the peak for that first exposure happened around day 10. So you could be fairly sick for quite some time before your immune system can really tackle this. However, if you take a closer look, you'll see that upon a secondary or a subsequent exposure, the actual speed of making the antibodies specific to this pathogen is so much quicker second time around. And that's because the memory cells were actually the cells that spotted that antigen. The memory cells knew that antigen was familiar and instantly, and I do mean instantly, started cloning themselves and triggering a humoral and cell-mediated response. The B cells quickly started producing mass amounts of antibodies. The helper T cells quickly launched the cytotoxic T cells to kill those infected cells if there are any. And boom, we typically won't feel a symptom during this period of time. Continuation of more memory cells will circulate throughout the body, both in the circulation but also in the lymphatic system. And that's why we would call this an immune response, because we no longer are going to be susceptible to that particular antigen. So I'll post an image of this whole process. I'd like you to review it a little bit. This is not a perfect fit for your white worksheet, nor is it a perfect fit for your mini lecture, but it is a beautiful bridge that incorporates both. Take some time, dig into the blue details of this image. I'll post up some still photographs in case you can't see the font during the video. Have a great weekend.